Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that I take very closely to heart. It's extremely disturbing to me, and it's extremely unorthodox, to say the least, and that is the conduct of the Army in the XM17 program. I put out a video not so long ago on the SIG P320. I stated what I thought were some concerns and so forth about it. And I had a lot of people, send me a message like I was a Glock fanboy, I was this, I was that, and such. And people not realizing that this goes well beyond manufacturers. This goes well above manufacturer loyalty. This goes to what is best for the United States military. Now, this program has been going on for well over a year, and it was announced in January, just a SHOT Show actually, that the P320 was the winner of the new handgun program. However, once you got into it, you found out that the Army did not even follow their own protocol. And this protocol is standard on every U.S. small arm that I can ever remember. I've been part of several acceptance tests myself. I've studied many of them throughout the years, especially with the M16 program and several others. And I'm quite familiar with how a normal military acceptance test is conducted. And when the RFQ or RFR was put out for the XM17, the Army strictly put out in sections M and H. I'm sure you can find these reports online. So what I'm telling you is not my opinion. This is actually what's written in the documents. In H, section H, I believe it was. I'm going to be using notes here because there's a lot of details on this that is very difficult for me to remember everything. Okay, it's stated in section M in the actual requisition for the XM17. It was stated what the testing would be in phase one. Phase one, basically, what phase one testing is you have, say, 9 pistols. And we're going to have a minimum standard test to see which one of those 9 pistols will make it through that so they can go on to become the final ones. So in this case, we went from, I think it was 9 pistols in the initial testing, and now we narrowed it down to 2 pistols. And in this case, it was the Glock and the SIG. And unfortunately, that's where it stopped. There is another section in there also that is known as Section H, is the PVT, or the production verification testing. This is what determines what is a better handgun or whether they are equal. Once you do your initial 12,500 rounds in the original test, which was just for vetting, it was just to get us down to the final 2, that testing was... it was not military grade. It was basically what that did was it gave the minimum standards, and it knocked out the pistols that couldn't, just hack the standard 12,500. And so other things were sort of interesting about that as well. All those rounds that were fired during that testing were all done out of a fixture, out of a ransom rest, which does not duplicate the human hand. And then to sort of make it even stranger, when the SIG went through its testing, you had 12,500 rounds go through the full-size pistol, but only 500 through the through the compact pistol, which also leads you to wonder that that separate pistol is a separate pistol. In fact, if I recall, you have the M17 and M18, which are the 2 pistols. Glock, on the other hand, just put 1 pistol forward. It had 1 pistol that met all the criteria and put it forward. So the Army didn't even completely test, even for the down select, the SIG P320 compact. So here's the question: which is the better pistol? I don't know. And what's worse is neither does the Army, because the critical test, the Section H PVT test or product verification test, this is where we find out what's going on. This consists of a 22,500 round test for endurance reliability. What you get out of that particular test is, first of all, you're going to know what parts are going to break first. That's also going to help you on being able to figure out what your spare parts packages are going to be and what you got to buy of both, which all figures into the later cost. And now we get into the even more important. We get into the environmental testing. How does the gun work in the cold? How does it work when it's hot? Dust, snow, ice, elevation testing. water, mud. How does the pistol perform in all these different conditions? This is the real nitty gritty on what makes one pistol stand out above the other. Considering what the M9 went through, the M9 went through the full 22,500 rounds. In fact, it went up to 35,000 rounds if I can recall. And that testing was conducted on both the Brent 92F and the SIG 226. Those two made it to the down select. They went through the original testing to bring you from 5 or 6, 7 pistols down to 2, and then it went through the product verification testing. And that's where it showed that, in fact, the M9 pistol program, the Brent 92F and the SIG were both equal. They both survived all those environmental and all those endurance tests, which the only way to choose a pistol after that is price. That's when it comes down to price. And that contract was won just by, Brent getting a better, deal on the magazines and spare parts packages. That's what it comes down to. So the soldiers knew they were not getting a substandard handgun either way, and it wasn't picking an inferior pistol just because of its price. The problem is with the XM18 program is I will definitely not say that the P320 is inferior because I don't know. I've got a few thousand rounds through one. I have a limited exposure to them, but the Army cannot tell you which one of these is a better pistol because they didn't test it. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, what that means to our soldiers is they're getting a handgun that they don't know is the best. They don't know how it's going to perform, over the long haul. The military has seen problems right after the adoption of it, with issues with extraction, with barrels, with frames, with several issues. And if they would have done the test properly and gone through the phase 2, they probably would have found these problems ahead of time and given SIG a chance to correct them before the problems surfaced like this. The other problem was the price itself. The price itself is what really sets things apart. Okay, now here's where we get some really interesting as you look at the pricing. Well, SIG came in at a price of $169,527,169, where Glock came in at $272,232,563. There's a pretty significant difference there. Well, if you look at the cost of the pistols, SIG, I have a strong feeling, is really cutting themselves really short with that low price as far as making any money on it, period. And now we have other issues we have to consider. Well, first issue we have to consider is all the engineering costs it's going to take to correct the issues that they currently have. And the second elephant in the room is the lawsuit that was just brought against them by Steyr for patent infringement on their trigger mechanism. And as I understand, it's a pretty good case against SIG. Well, not just SIG, but against Beretta and possibly Ruger. The patent violation, at least in my opinion, is pretty clear cut. So if that happens, and you can guarantee SIG's going to get a really good punitive cost. Not to mention there's going to be a royalty taken out of every pistol that they sell that utilizes this mechanism. So what is that going to do to that cost? In my opinion, the cost that the SIG is putting out right now is unsustainable. Now, for as far as I don't care which pistol makes it. I want the best pistol to make it, and it's the only way for them to figure that out is to run them through the proper testing. This testing goes back the same with going back to the M16. If you look over the test, the M16 had to go through trials in the Arctics and all that kind of stuff. This is just normal. It's you look at the testing that went through with the Mark 23. It was normal to have all this heavy endurance and reliability and durability testing. How the Army just saw it fit to adopt a pistol without testing it based solely on price. And when you look at the reality, it's about what it's priced. If you look at all the way that these pistols are rated by the government, both of them were bid sample test technical. We're looking at the table that the government put out on the testing that was done, what little it was. Bid sample test technical, initial reliability, full size, one gun. Glock outstanding, and SIG outstanding. Bid samples. Glock was acceptable, 6 hour was good. Accuracy, no shooter in the loop, marginal was on both. Characteristics of the projectiles, good. Joint warfare ergonomics, acceptable for Glock and good. And you're looking at a lot of these things, it doesn't particularly make a lot of sense, considering what both pistols are. Pistols that you see here are not exactly what the pistols are that we're talking about. Right here we have a full-size P320 SIG, which is now the M17. Now this differs in a couple ways. One is that you don't have the manual safety on it. This is not flat dark earth. And another major difference is this one here does not have the anti-tamper mechanism on the slide assembly latch to prevent the soldier from being able to do all this wonderful modularity that we're talking about. Which is something else I would want to address too, is this whole issue of a modular handgun system. If you look at what both of them put out, you have removable back straps, and in SIG's case, you have two different frames. Now, anybody who's been in the military, I think you guys know as well as I do. First off, you are not going to have a pistol custom fit to you. You're not going to walk into any arms room and see a bin full of grip panels, whether it be for the SIG or for the Glock. You're not going to see different frames. In fact, your average soldier, he's not going to be able to take this thing apart and swap out frames because of an anti-tamper device on the disassembling latch here. So, I think the modularity has been really overplayed on this for what the reality is going to actually be. The SIG pistol, the fact that it did not have that testing through it, and you also don't have what you have a proven design here. This just came out in 2014. It hasn't been tested by any other military. This does not have any kind of established combat record, which I do have to say for Glock. Glock has over 30 years of combat experience, so it does have that. So, and all what this means is the U.S. military has now been put in a position to adopt a pistol that they don't know is the best. They're going to be handing them out to soldiers who don't know how they're going to react in 10, 20,000 rounds, 30,000 rounds, because they didn't test it. They don't know. They don't know if they go to a cold weather environment if it's going to work or not. I again want to make sure I hesitate to state the same as with Glock. We don't know. They don't know. And I think that's really putting the military in a bad position to adopt a weapon that has not been tested. Modularity, again, modular handgun system. The modularity, I think, has been very much overstated in these pistols. I think we have to be a little realistic here. First of all, we look at the M17. The modularity does not go to the user level. Anybody who's been in the military knows you're not going to walk into an arms room and you're going to find a bin full of different lower receivers and such. It's not going to happen. No one's going to issue you a custom pistol. Not to mention the fact that the final XM17 has a anti-tamper system on the disassembling latch lever here, so the end user can't even remove it, the trigger mechanism, to put it in something that was smaller. Same thing going with Glock for as far as the removable grip panels in the rear. I don't see going into any arms room and seeing a bins full of different sizes and somebody going in and fitting their hand to it. There's just some reality here that is not there. The extent of the modularity is going to be the ambi features, making an ambi magazine release or an ambi slide stop, which both of them have ambi slide stops, and both of them have reversible magazine release buttons. But again, a reversible magazine release button is going to have to be done at an armor level. Even the M9 had a reversible magazine release button. So I think a lot of emphasis has been put on the modularity. Is once you get into the field, you're not going to be seeing any of this modularity that people have been talking about. I think there's something else that we're really going to have to take a look at between these two pistols. You're looking at the Glock pistol, which has well over 30 years of combat experience. The Glock 19 was just adopted by SOCOM. Is their pistol to replace their SIG-226s and such. And in case of the Marines, they have adopted the Glock 19 to replace that disastrous Colt M45A1. So we've already had two of our highest, some of our most elite units who've already switched over to the Glock pistol, and to see the Army have a complete opposite reaction to it is sort of disturbing as well. That we've already gone through all this. These guys have actually done the testing on these guns too, and this is what they ended up going with. So I guess you really have to look at why these branches are talking to each other. Read the contract yourself. I don't want you guys taking my word for any of this. This stuff is all black and white. If you read in the contract, I'll read you a little bit of it here. The government will then make a final down selection through a single contractor by the following the evaluation procedures contained in Section H of the RFP. And then you look at the weapon systems component package items, which will be due in 60 days from the receipt of the order, will be used as part of the down select evaluation described in Section H of the RFP. Again, Section H is what they chose to ignore. The down select proposal, the contractor whose proposals represent the best value to the government. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of this came down to. It came down to value over performance. And I say that not as a negative aspect on the SIG pistol in general. I say it in the fact that the Army had made the choice without seeing which was a better pistol, without determining that. We get down to this, it's the same point we're going over and over again. We don't know. But we're going to be posting up a couple of these documents up on Facebook, so you guys can see it, you can read it yourself. And I would say when you do read this, be objective. I own Berettas, SIGs, Glock, HKs. I own several different kinds of pistols. I certainly have my own favorites. However, when it comes down to this, there's only one thing that's important: is what's in fact best for the American soldier. What is it best for him? And at that point, I don't care what it is. Whatever comes out of that test comes out on top. That's what it should be. Whether it's either one of these, so be it the SIG, so be it the Glock. It's as long as they get the best piece of equipment. Speaking as somebody who's been in the private sector working with the gun manufacturers, the Army has a responsibility to complete this test. If you look at all of the manufacturers who submitted pistols to this modular handgun weapons program, if you think of the amount of money they put into R&D, testing, evaluation, getting their manuals together, getting all the contracts. If any of you know anything about government contracts and what it takes to submit to those, it's an incredibly expensive and tedious process. To have them go through all that, and then you get down to the final two, and then to tell one of them, well, we're not even going to bother testing to see if you're better or not, because we have a better price on this other one. I think that's totally unfair to the companies who put money into these things to be part of this, and then not to even have a chance to be proven whether they're better or not. I do believe that is a violation, and it's irresponsible of the Army to not do the testing that by contract they're supposed to do. Read it in the contract yourself. They were supposed to do this, and they declined not to. And I also wanted to reiterate the fact that by them not doing this testing is bad for both SIG and Glock. By not having either one of them know which one in fact is the better handgun or who's worthy of having this contract. The problem lies with the Army. It does not lie with SIG. It does not lie with Glock. It lies with people who are responsible to provide the U.S. serviceman with the finest weapon that's available in the world today. And I've had a lot of people say to me, because I've been a little more vocal about this because it very much upsets me, it's only a pistol. Pistols are so rarely used in combat. They're personal defense weapon. Who really cares? Well, I think that's totally wrong. I think no matter what weapon we put in our soldiers' hands, we have the obligation to give them the best equipment in the world. And whether it's a rifle or it's a pistol, those pistols need to go through the exact same testing that the rifles do to ensure that they will work for that soldier in any environment, under any condition. Just the way its predecessor did. The Beretta M9 went through all of that testing. It went through it twice because people felt that the testing was unfair. They got a retrial. The Beretta, I think it did go to 22,500, but if I recall, it went up to 32 to 35,000 rounds. As you go through that phase 2 testing and you go through all this durability, you're looking at several issues. First of all, you're looking at the 22,500 round endurance test, and through that, you're going to find out how durable the gun is, what parts are more prone to break. This can give you an idea of what replacement schedule is going to be. Then you go through the environmental test. You have environmental chambers that will bring the gun up to over like 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and then they'll start testing it to see how it works in extended heat. And then you have cold chambers where they're going to go through and they're going to be iced and they're going to be tested in cold weather. You got salt sprays to test for corrosion. You're going to have underwater for testing for over the beach capabilities. Will the gun fire if it's full of water? You're going to have end user test to see how they perform. You have all this critical stuff. All this critical testing that's going to tell you what this gun is. A lot comes out of that testing. And as part of that testing is, once you go through that phase 2, you will look at these two pistols and compare the results. either one's going to win, the other one's going to fail, which your winner's your winner. And regardless of what the price tags are, you have to adopt the one that actually passed the test. Or if they both pass, now you're going to look at the price tag, and now you're going to be able to say, well, this one's a better value for the government. We'll go that way. You can't look at these price tags or anything until after that phase 2 testing. That's very, 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 very important, at least in my opinion. You know, as somebody who's been a historian, who's been around this stuff for a long time, you know, you look at what McNamara did in the 1960s after Ordnance Corps finally screwed up the M16. McNamara looked at what failures that the Ordnance Corps has done on the American soldier all those years, and he finally shut them down because they were not capable of conducting a proper weapons program. They weren't able to be impartial. They were more concerned about their own careers, keeping government arsenals going. And so when he disbanded that, that basically took all that R&D, everything out of the Army's hands and put it into the private sector. So all the weapons that would be submitted to the Army will all be from private companies. And that was going to take care of a lot of that self-serving attitude that existed all prior to that. Unfortunately, as we see today, some of those problems still exist today. People who are not doing their jobs for the American soldier. Now, some people will say that there could have been some foul play involved in this because of the blatant disregard for their own contract. I'm not going to go as far as saying that. I think I'd go as far as to say that I think that the significant lower price tag clouded people's judgment as to what would be in the best interest of our soldiers. I definitely say that would be fair to say. You know, the protests, of course, is coming from Glock because they're the ones who were affected by this. They were the ones who never had the opportunity to literally compete against the P320 because they didn't conduct the testing. You know, so I think even along with that, I think you're looking at defamation that could go on Glock's favor also against the U.S. government. You have a pistol that people went out and bought because they said the P320 is now the M17. That's the new U.S. military pistol. It has to be better than the Glock because it beat it out. So if you look at the amount of sales that SIG's going to have, that Glock would have had if they would have won. So, there's certainly that to be involved. Glock put a lot of money into this. Of course you're not going to hear from SIG because they won. Of course you're going to hear Glock doing that. And anybody who reads the Glock's, their protest, there's nothing in there that's unreasonable. I've read the whole thing over several times. And, there's a lot of experts out there who've read over that and they agree, people who've been involved in the industry. I think Glock has every right to demand that they get their data test. I think another thing that's important for us to look at are the costs themselves. Okay, the price for the Glock pistols, $272,232,563. Price for the SIG, $169,527,169. Well, there's a couple issues with this price. The first one I want to talk about is sustainability. I have deep concerns about the sustainability of this price by SIG, and I'll tell you why. First of all, going through the process, the Army doesn't know what's going to fail on it, when it's going to fail, or have any clue of how to put together a spare parts package for it. When you go through these endurance tests, you learn where the gun strengths are, weaknesses are, what parts are to go first, and then it'll all be part of your spare parts package. They didn't do that. And also during the testing, this small amount of the 12,500 rounds that went during for this, I'm not going to call it endurance test. It was merely a vetting process to go through all the guns and see which ones would pass. The Glock pistol that was submitted, as you've seen from the pictures, is basically a Model 17 frame, cut down, taken a Glock 19 slide. Now, all that configuration met all of the government's criteria for both the compact and the full-size pistol. So Glock submitted one pistol. SIG did a two-pistol option. Now, those are considered two separate guns. I believe it's called the XM17 and XM18, or the M17 and M18 for the two different pistols. And their spare parts came in lower than Glock's did, which makes absolutely no sense. You have two guns with a much more complex trigger mechanism. versus the Glock, single pistol, much fewer parts. The math doesn't add up onto it, by no means. And there's another really big question I have about the sustainability of the SIG model. Whether you guys know it or not, there's a lawsuit that's been filed against SIG by Steyr for patent infringement on their trigger mechanism. Now that was not just against SIG, it was also against Beretta. I do believe there was another one, I think possibly Ruger may be up for that too, I'm not sure. They have a very similar type of a trigger mechanism. Now, I have some experience with patent cases, and I have to say it looks pretty strong on Steyr's part, real strong. So if Steyr was to win that case, you're going to have a lump sum punitive damage that's going to be awarded to them that SIG's going to have to pay, and then you're going to have to get a royalty on all the guns that have been produced and that will be produced under that contract, and which will drastically affect the cost of that pistol, driving it up. So I don't believe that they're going to be able to sustain that price, considering the changes they've already had to make in R&D to correct the problems they've had with extraction, with barrel issues, with frames issues. With all those issues, there's cost that goes into that plus the fixes, which adds to that price. And now the legal problems that you're going to have right now, that's going to add to it as well. So, that's a really big concern. The bottom line is this. Can the Army look at a soldier, hand him a pistol, and say, we're giving you the best tool that we can to make sure that you can do your job and come home safely? They can't look at him and say that because they did not do their due diligence. What I want to see done is I want to see both those pistols go through the Phase 2 testing, which they were contractually obligated to, and determine which gun is better or if both of them are equal. And that is wherever the chips may fall, whether it be the SIG or whether it be the Glock. As long as our soldiers have the best weapon that's available to them, I would be happy. And you should be in the same situation. It's about our soldiers. It's not about manufacturer loyalty. It's about our soldiers. Thank you for watching, and please check our Facebook page. You will find the documents that we're talking about so you can see this for yourself. And we'll try to insert some of the end of this video as well.